Thank you, Emma. I had my Bible open reading Seek Ye First. That's the name of the song, right? Yeah, Seek Ye First. You could just hear it come out, fully resolved. Beautiful, Emma. Thank you. And thank you, Michaela, and your worship leaders. Amen. I didn't look, but I suspect some of you were doing the motions. Yeah. Hey, last Sabbath. You might have missed it, and that's okay. I just want to tell you as a testimony how blessed I was to participate in our first Go Sabbath. Pastor Bill and the women's ministry and a group of leaders put together a lunch for us, and then a card-a-thon where hundreds of cards were written just to say, we're praying, we love you. And they were shared and spread out. And maybe you received a card. Maybe you wrote a card. Some 60 people writing cards and just spending an hour together on Sabbath trying to make an impact. I'm telling you, as a pastor and as a father, that's the kind of place I want to be. I want my children engaged in sharing Jesus. And so that was a huge blessing. Every month, I was telling Pastor Bill, I read the church manual. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has a manual that guides us in our processes so that we can do trustworthy processes and trust each other in different decisions and honor and respect those. And I was reading through it as I occasionally need to reference it. And I told Pastor Bill this week, I said, did you know the church manual actually has a little paragraph just tucked away in there that says it is recommended that each congregation has a missionary Sabbath once a month? And I said, fancy that. They put that in there after we had Go Sabbath last week. And then they put that right in the church manual. So it is. We'll have another one, a few weeks, and keep going. Just different things. It will be different every week. And listen, I'm going a whole different direction here now. All the times that the older people point their fingers at the young people and say, these young people, they're just not engaged. And the number of times that the old people say, I'm just not, that's just not my thing. There are a lot of boxes we put ourselves in, older people, that we ought to just say, hey, I'm going to try. I'm willing to try it. I'll go knock on a door. No, I don't either. But do it once or twice for the cause of Jesus. Just try it. Write a card. You say, I'm not a card writer. I'm a texter. Well, write a card. Come on. And text. Whatever. All right. Father, we're going into your word. We're opening our Bibles. We pray that as you spoke these words, that you will speak to our hearts 100 different ways for the cause of Jesus. Amen. I've got to take you to North Carolina, to a new construction. They're building a house. And the work crew came in one Monday morning and noticed that there was mud that had been kind of smeared down the opening hallway and around some of the rooms and even on the walls. And that wasn't totally unexpected in that people sometimes come in during the weekend and look at a new building, will track in mud. And the finished work, the flooring hadn't been laid, so it was no big deal. They just kind of scraped it up, swept it up, and kept working. Well, the HVAC inspector was in later that week, a few days later, and he had to go up into the attic to check the attic and some of the duct work. And he's standing in the attic, and this is the picture from his perspective. This is what he sees. Now, you may not catch a good glimpse of it here, a good look, but this is a snout, and he thinks it's some sort of decoy, some sort of stuffed gator somebody has thrown up in the attic, or it's just a joke. And then the decoy winks at him. Yeah. And so after he gathers himself and gets the proper team there, I'm just going to show you a picture of the snout. Just the snout. Here it is. That's it. That's just the nose of what they pull out, an 8-foot alligator. Full story. Those mud tracks over the weekend weren't just somebody popping in, popping out, looking at the layout of the new house. This guy had moved in and climbed up somehow into the attic and made his home in the cool, dark attic. Until they had to pull him out. I want you to take a good look here at that, and then hang this thought in your mind. Is it possible? Is it possible that there's an 8-foot gator hanging out in your life, in your attic, that you don't know about? All right. We're going to Joshua chapter 22. Joshua chapter 22. Joshua chapter 23 is Joshua's farewell address. So we're right at the end where Joshua had taken the leadership from Moses, brought the children of Israel into the promised land, and had established them. And now this is the final moments of Joshua's leadership, as it were. The full story, of course, the Israelites have been journeying out of Egypt through the desert to the promised land. God had brought them into the promised land. They came to the Jordan, and 2.5 of the tribes, 2.5 of the 12 tribes were being shepherds, said, wait a minute. We know that the promised land lies across the Jordan, but this land on the east side of the Jordan would be really conducive to our families, our tribes, to do our business of shepherding. Can we stay here? The leadership came together, prayed about it, and it was decided, God's leading, yes, you can, but you'll need to come with us across the Jordan to help settle the rest of the tribes. Come together with us, we'll settle the tribes, and then you can come back and have your part of the promise here. So they came. This wasn't just a few weeks or a few months even. This was years that they're now establishing the rest of the tribes, and Israel has now settled. They fought bravely side by side with their brethren, and now they're returning to the east side of the Jordan, right? They're going back across to where their homes are, 2.5 of the tribes. That the land was at rest. There wasn't any more war. Tragically, unlike what it is today. That very same region. As the war continues and lives are lost and heartbreak continues. Some of you have brought up the question that you're getting from friends or classmates or coworkers about Israel, and it's true. If there's one thing that would trigger the conversation of America, religious of all persuasions and non-religious, it's the question of Israel. Israel, like no other subject, has the attention of America. Even more so. In fact, in a few weeks, I'm flying to Dubai in the United Emirates to speak for a convocation. And I asked them, how's the impact there? And they said, even here in Dubai, we don't have the same impact as you guys in America because of the attention that is given to Israel. And so we've been getting these questions. You've gotten a question. Maybe you have these questions. How does Israel play out in prophecy? And so Pastor Bill and I sat down and said, look, let's gather a few resources. There's a link in the Happy Friday email. It will be again in next week's email for a Q&A discussion that Amazing Facts hosted. You're welcome to tune into that. There's also some video and audio resources. The best / only way we could get them was in DVD and CD. I know. Stop. If you have a DVD player or a CD player and you would like to tune into some of this material, it was ordered and shared with the library. You can work straight with our library to check that out and to listen to it and to watch it. And then we've gotten one more resource, a book that was put out on Israel and prophecy. It's a sharing size book that can be shared with your friends. They were sold out, but they dug in their back warehouse and found us 30 copies, and so we ordered them, and they should be here in this next week. And so we'll just provide these if they can be useful for sharing the Bible truths as people have questions about Israel. All right, but we're in Joshua chapter 22. Here, then, they're headed back across the Jordan River. Now, I'm going to put it on the screen in the New King James Version. Whatever version you're reading is fine. I'm going to read it partly out of the NIV, but have the New King James on the screen because I want to point out a few nuances the New King James actually brings out. And translating is inherently difficult to capture the nuances, but the New King James captures a few that I want to point out. Joshua chapter 22, let's drop down to verse 10. When they came to Gilead, near the Jordan, the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, that's the 2.5 tribes that had come across the Jordan, but were now headed back to the eastern side of the Jordan River. They built an imposing altar there by the Jordan. They got to the Jordan River and they built, as the New King James puts it, a great, impressive altar. Now, great, impressive. I just want you to capture that because it's trying to paint a picture here. It was a great, impressive altar. What happens next? This sets us up for what happens next. And it's a little funny, but not really. Verse 11. So, verse 10, great, impressive altar. Huge altar, we would say. All right? Now, verse 11. And in the New King James, I want to read it from there. Now, the children of Israel heard. Now, the children of Israel heard. Do you catch the line that's coming? Right? They built a great, huge altar. Now, the children of Israel heard. Someone that remains nameless. They were very kind to them. They just remained nameless. Or were they always nameless? Because the someone has always been nameless. In fact, someone still goes to church at Centerville. They've always gone to church. The someone. Let's just hit full pause on this and talk about the someone. Someone walks around. Psst. Hey, did you hear? Huge altar. And we always use hyperbole when we're trying to make a point, especially when we're in protest. Yeah. No, there's a bunch of us that are against the changes that happen in church. I mean, it's my wife and I really, but it's a bunch of us, all right? I mean, just, I've heard, it's a huge altar, someone said. It's a huge altar, someone said. And pretty soon it's passed around the Sabbath lunch table as people eat together. Huge, yeah, it's a huge altar. Oh, that's not right. That is not right because they're pagan God. Yeah, huge altar. That's not right. And pretty soon, someone said, and the children of Israel heard. Did you catch that sequence? Huge, impressive altar. Now the children of Israel heard someone say, I hope someone in the end had a conversion because I want to meet someone in heaven. But whoever this someone is has always been a part of every church community. There's just someone. Psst. Hey, did you see what the elders did? Yeah, huge. There's a bunch of us that are against it. Beloved, this is how it plays out. And it played out on the side of the Jordan when 2.5 tribes are headed back to take possession. They have gotten to the promised land. And Satan says, no. I can't let the people be at peace. I can't let them be unified together. I've got to split them up. Demons. What are our options? And the demons looked and said, well, there's a river and 2.5 tribes are going back across. We could use the river and we could take something good that they meant for good and they built an altar of worship. Altar of worship, that's our teaching series. We understand a personal altar, a family altar, a family worship, a community altar of a church coming together, hundreds of people coming together to worship. It's a good thing. They built an altar. But it was huge. It was too big, too much, and and they're probably worshiping pagan gods. Probably. I mean, I don't know for sure, but someone said. Someone always says. Someone is always saying, and we ought to put someone out of business. What someone said was true. They did build an altar. And it might have been a big altar, but it was not in the full context. And pretty soon it got back to the body of the community of believers, and they believed that something wrong was happening. And rightly so, they should have reacted. Why? Because sin in their camp had nearly wiped them out from crossing into the promised land. Sin was a major issue. They weren't willing to turn a blind eye, and they shouldn't have. But someone without the full story, or without asking for the full story, began to say something about it. Now, are there things that go wrong that should be addressed? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But when it's not understood, when the full context is not understood, some of the most painful parts of leadership in the church or in any organization is when you hear from across the country an article, a statement, a social media post about an organization or a church that you serve and help lead, and they are telling you the motives for which you're doing something. And you just think but they weren't there in the late night conversation and the prayerful, as heads were bowed, pleading with God to lead, but they've taken a snapshot and now decided the right or the wrong of it from afar, and now they're going to publish it and promote it. And someone said, and it's partly true, there was an altar by the Jordan River, but it wasn't understood what the altar was for. Now, do we need to own up and point out the wrongs? Yes. We'll get there in a minute. But let me just unpack it this way. Using this, if you, husband, spent time with someone who consistently and regularly pointed out the faults and weaknesses of your bride, how much would you appreciate and value that person? How about somebody that was constantly letting you know about the weaknesses and the deficiencies of your body? You know, you're kind of a little, you're kind of short. You know, your eyesight's pretty poor. And pretty soon, no. But we have taken full license to do that for the body and the bride of Christ. How much He must love us to keep loving us when we dog on His bride, His body. Someone is still around, and sometimes that someone is me, sometimes that someone is you. And could it be that what disenfranchises the young people, the middle-aged people, and the old people of our church is that they hear from us around our Sabbath tables how weak and broken the body of Christ is. At one point, any rational, right-minded person is saying, I'm out of here. The rest of the story. Okay. I did put in my notes the line from a gospel hymn entitled The Rumor Mill. The line is, I scratched it out, now it's coming back in. The line from the old gospel hymn entitled The Rumor Mill is, shut your mouth and kindly tell your friends to do the same. Back to the story. The news came back. All of Israel. Verse 12. Now all of Israel, the children of Israel heard it. The whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered together at Shiloh to go to war against their own tribes. They have journeyed through the desert. Now they've come into the promised land. They've settled. These tribes had helped them settle in their own territories. For years they had fought alongside of them, and now they were going to go to war against them. Why? Well, because a pagan altar would mean damage for the whole community. So they had good motives. But so did the altar builders. The rest of the story. Joshua, cooler heads prevailed. Brought the leaders of the 10 tribes and came and met together. They sent a delegation. They sent a delegation to ask about it. We want to understand where you're coming from. Seek to understand rather than to be understood. 2 responses came from the community, Joshua and those leaders. 2 responses. 2 responses. And those 2 responses had 2 conclusions, 2 results. Let's look at the 2 responses and the 2 results that they produced, and we'll be done. All right, here they are. Number 1, the first response was accountability. And that's what the community of Christ does. We hold each other accountable. Now, everyone likes accountability. Yes, we need to hold each other accountable until you're the one being held accountable. And I'm the one held accountable. Hey, you know, when you said that, it was hurtful. Well, I know, but I really didn't mean. No. This is a moment of accountability. You know, when you did that, it wasn't in line with I know, but it was. No. This is accountability. We like accountability except for when it's about us. But they reacted correctly so. There should be accountability. Why? Because their sin had cost the lives of thousands, rather, on the border of the Promised Land. You remember Balaam? Balaam said, hey, don't curse them, infiltrate them. Just slide in with some options, some compromises. He said, you want to take down these people? Don't try to curse them. Infiltrate them where you can separate them from the source of their protection and their blessing. So that's on the minds of the tribes, and they're saying, no, we can't let this happen again. There's a huge altar that was just built, and it was probably built, someone said it was built for pagan purposes. Let's take them on. Let's go to war. 2 books I read recently, or this past year, I've reread them. I want to put their lines on the screen from 2 books. That's it, besides Scripture, of course. Ellen White, Patriarchs and Prophets. Words on the screen. Their iniquitous practices did that for Israel, which all the enchantments of Balaam could not do. They separated them from God. By swift coming judgments, the people were awakened to the enormity of their sin. Sin separates us from God, beloved. Sin is not your friend. Thank you for the children's story. Sin is not something to play with, to coddle. Sin must be dealt with. And the people of God knew that. And that's why there was accountability. We will hold our people accountable. When sin became accepted, it had grown and matured. And then a terrible pestilence had broke out, you remember, with Balaam. Tens of thousands speedily fell prey, and God commanded that the leaders in this apostasy would be put to death and their bodies hung for all the community to see. This is the result of sin. God was serious about this. He doesn't play with sin. He died for it. It's not something He plays with. So there's accountability. And Joshua and those 10 leaders came. They came for accountability. Sin can be individual, but sin will have a community impact. What you do in the privacy of your own life will impact the community. It will impact your family. Fast forward now to Achan. Balaam and then Achan. Achan's sin brought disaster upon the whole nation. How's that fair? It was just Achan's sin. Just deal with it. No. The whole nation. As again, Patriarchs and Prophets. For one man's sin, the displeasure of God will rest upon His church. Do you like how she just transitioned from Achan's story with the tribes to sin and the church? She just advanced it right to our day. For one man's sin, the displeasure of God will rest upon His church till the transgression is searched and out and put away. That's accountability. Keep reading. The influence. No. This is going to get real personal real quick. The influence to be most feared by the church is not that of open opposers, infidels, and blasphemers. Well, If you take those off the list, who are we worried about? Because that's really the problem. The blasphemers, the infidels, the opposers. Who, then, is to be most feared? You don't want to read the next words, but you got to. Here it goes. But of inconsistent professors of Christ. What is to be most feared? What is the sin to be sought out? What is the sin that we should be holding each other accountable about? It's the inconsistent professors of Christ. These are the ones that keep back the blessing of God, the God of Israel, and bring weakness upon the community of faith. Wait a minute. The blasphemer, no. You and I, beloved. It's the one who sings with the kids in the worship service, and then at Sabbath lunch becomes the someone. Remember the someone we just talked about? Someone, yeah. It's the one who in Sabbath school engages in a study, but then Saturday night in the privacy of their own home entertains entertainment that is contrary to the very beliefs they engaged that morning. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. That's the problem. So before you and I take our bony fingers and point them across the room or across the community, fall to our knees. Say, Jesus, is it me? Because I want to be all right with you. The one who professes Christ, but then gossips about his body, his bride. When the church is in difficulty, when coldness and spiritual declension exist, giving occasion for the enemies of God to triumph, then instead of folding our hands and lamenting their unhappy state, let the members inquire if there is not an Achan in the camp. But remember, who's the Achan? We like accountability as long as we're holding someone else accountable. And I don't know, in my very young few years of life, if it gets any easier, because so far it hasn't. I need correction. My wife, on a run some time ago, shared just a moment of wisdom when she said, if individually we're right with God at our private altars, it will make the community altar all right. So that's response number one, accountability. Yes, accountability. And that bodes well for many of us. Yep, let's have accountability. Let's call the board together, the elders. Let's have... Watch what happens next. The second response. The second response is compassion. They approached with questions. Hey, we've heard there's an altar. We're not sure what's going on. Tell us your story. And if you would use that line, beloved, tell us your story. I want to hear your story. It would open up and invite people into a confidentiality, to a community with you that you can't otherwise experience. For years, I kept a picture of a cow on the screen of my laptop. Just a little file saved on the corner where I could still see it while I worked on documents. Just a picture of a cow. Someone had sent it to me with this quote, a quote from an ex-slaughterhouse worker. This is their line. Cows do think and have emotions. I have worked, this individual says, I have worked in the largest slaughterhouse on the planet, Iowa Beef, now Tyson Foods. We killed 200 cattle an hour. They would weep, crying with big tears, trembling with fear. Cows have emotions just like your dog or cat. Someone after first service told me that's exactly right. Been there and watched it as these cows faced their end. The picture on my computer was just to remind me, if cows have emotion, if they're afraid, if they're worried or stressed or hurting, how much more my brother or sister who might be coming off a little hard, a little cold, but how much they're dealing with. If cows hurt, every human hurts. No matter how many times they say, I'm fine. Everyone you can see is dealing with something. What about compassion? Speaking of this story in Patriarchs and Prophets, put the words on the screen for you. No one has ever been reclaimed from a wrong position by censure and reproach. But many are thus driven further from the right path and led to harden their hearts against conviction. A spirit of kindness, a courteous, forbearing deportment may save the erring and hide a multitude of sins. That's all. It doesn't make their wrong right. But apparently there's a right, and then there's a right. So Joshua, instead of going to war to correct the wrong, he brought a delegation that just said, we want to understand where you're coming from. Please explain. We've heard, the rumors have been out. We just want to hear. And as the story was shared, and as the community of faith came together and understood, oh, you thought, no, we built this altar as a memorial. Oh, you heard, oh, we're so sorry. They came together in accountability and compassion. And two things resulted. Here they are. Number one, unity. Unity was the result. Of course, unity would be the result of anybody asking, I want to hear your story. I want you to help me understand your position. If we ever seek to understand before we're understood, we will always have unity. Picking up again in Patriarchs and Prophets, the same story. Ellen White, here she goes. Even under false accusations, those who are in right can afford to be calm and considerate. God is acquainted with all that is misunderstood and misrepresented by men, and we can safely leave our cases in His hands. We can leave our cases in His hands. No, preacher. One of the spiritual gifts I've read about is correcting others. And I feel like I have that. Don't we all? Yeah, it's one of the non-spiritual gifts. Keep reading, those who are actuated by the Spirit of Christ will possess the charity which suffers long and is kind. It is the will of God that union and brotherly love should exist among His people. Wait a minute. We need accountability. Yes. But when compassion is the one that is what encases the accountability, then brotherly love will exist. The Happiest Man on Earth. That's the title of a book describing Eddie Jaku. It's a surprising story. It's worth a read. It's a short book. He's a German Jew. As a teenager, his world fell apart when on November 9, 1938, he was arrested, beaten by SS thugs on what is now known as Kristallnacht, night of broken glass. He was sent to a concentration camp, and then to another, and then to another. And for 7 years, he experienced the concentration camps, including the famous Auschwitz. Everything he had was taken from him. We're not talking about possessions. We're talking about stuff on the inside as they try to rip that out of you and make you inhuman. In fact, he tells how men and women were running to the electric fence to electrocute themselves to take away the privilege of the captors from doing it. But then his book, The Happiest Man on Earth. He now lives in Australia, or he did when he wrote the book. Put his words on the screen. Happiness is something we choose. It's up to you. Don't get hung up on the word happiness. It's the rest of the sentence that I wanted to bring to your attention. It's something we can choose. It's up to us. Doesn't make it easy. There was nothing easy about Auschwitz. There's nothing easy about his life. But he chose. He chose it. Keep reading. The most important thing I have learned, the greatest thing you will ever do is to be loved by another. Come on, don't give us some psychobabble about just love. This is a church and we stand for the right. Sure we do. We stand for the right. Let's bring up Peter. Peter, what would you have to say to us about this subject? Put his words on the screen since he can't be here today. Finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil. Don't do that. Don't do insult with insult. On the contrary, his point is on the complete opposite. So you don't just land in the middle. No, you react completely different. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Don't repay evil with indifference. Repay evil with blessing. The Christian way is the Christ way, dying for those who hurt you. Because to this you are called, so that you may inherit a blessing. It's almost too much to wrap your mind around. Where did Peter get something like that? That's outrageous. Bless those who hurt you. He got it from the God who he spent time with. And we'll get it too when we go to our personal altars. We'll get the same message. John 13, verse 35. By this everyone will know who you are, that you are followers of me, that you've spent time with me. Not because you have stated, hey, I spend a half an hour a day with Jesus. That's not how they know that we're his disciples. Not that they see our car in the parking lot, but how we treat the very people we worship with when we have differences. Beloved, you and I both watch. You and I both watch the same thing. It's not the spouses that we want to know. How do they really treat each other? Not when they're getting along, but when they aren't getting along. Then you and I are like, okay, now let's see Christianity. That's Jesus' point. You're going to have differences. I'm not going to solve them. Why would I solve them? Because if I solved them, then your love wouldn't be on display for the world to know. I think Jesus intentionally leaves differences in a community of faith so that we can prove to the world. I've been reading these stories, beloved. These stories coming out of the disaster, the tragedies of the past 2 weeks. I want to put two young people's picture on the screen. Maya and Ite, their brother and sister. They were celebrating their mom's birthday abroad. They live in Israel, but they were celebrating it abroad. They flew back in to Tel Aviv Friday, October 6th, and had heard about this music festival. I'm not condoning the music festival. I'm just saying they heard about it. They went. They flew in Friday night, got up, and went bright and early Saturday morning to a music festival in the desert. Still early on Saturday, October 7th, their father is now telling the story. Their father has a voice recording of his daughter, here in the picture, saying to her father, "They're killing us. They're killing us, Dad. They're killing us." He says, "No, send me your location. Where are you at? What's going on?" And then he hears her yell at her brother. "Go to the wheel," she screams. "Go to the wheel." "Where are you?" he calls back. "Where are you?" I can't. We're all dying," she screams. And then she says, "I love you." That's the last he heard from them. While not hearing her voice, he screams back into the phone for them to hide and that he's coming for them. He's coming for them. Just hide and wait. He hasn't heard from them again. He's seen them on a video that was shared. They're tied up in the back of a pickup truck, being transported somewhere. He goes as fast as he can south from Tel Aviv, where they live, to as far as he can get, checking with anybody who will talk to him. Hospitals, have you heard from them? He gets as far as the blockades and they won't let him any further. He tries to get around it. How can I get down there? I will sacrifice my life. He says, let me sign something. I'll go in. I just want to go in and see if I can find him. It's a picture of a father's love, heartbreak. And it touches our hearts. But maybe we write it off. Nah, it's a father's love. Fathers, mothers. But what if these were the kind of stories that the world saw in the church between people that were not related, willing to give up their lives to save someone they even disagree with? Then the world would say, those must be disciples of Jesus. Because the Father's love, and while that we were yet sinners, died for us. The first result was unity. The second result, this is exciting. The second result, listen to this verse, Joshua chapter 22. I'm going to start in 22 and just in verse 22 as well, and then I'm going to jump down to verse 27. Here it goes. The mighty one, God, the Lord, the mighty one, the Lord, He knows. There's a surrender. Hey, we have differences of perspective here, but God knows. He knows. He's in charge. And then listen to verse 27. It is to be a witness. They named the altar Witness. It is to be a witness between us and you and the generations that follow, that they know we worship the Lord. Do you understand? As these all gathered together, the leaders of the tribes, they said, well, should we take the altar down? I mean, it was a misunderstanding. It's a difference of perspectives. We thought one thing, you thought another. Maybe we should take it down. And they said, no, let's leave it up. And then the generations that follow us will say, what's that altar for? And it will be a witness of the community of faith coming together in love. Accountability, yes. But it will be a witness of what brought us together. They named it Witness. And could it be that the great witness of the Church of Christ is still today in those areas that we differ when we come together? Not as someone who says, psst, hey, psst, huge, it's huge, and there's a bunch of us. Not that. But as we come together and seek to understand each other, say, what's your side of the story? What's your perspective? And then God uses that and says, that's my body. That's my bride. Yes, she's got problems. But I'll take it and I'll show it to the world. All right, one more story and I'm done. This comes full circle. Comes out of Texas. A gemstone broker was headed through one of these rock conventions. He almost didn't go. He was from Idaho. He almost didn't go, but he said, well, maybe I'll go down and just look through what's being on display at this rock convention. He's looking through, not the prized, expensive ones. He's looking through in the back ways of the convention where there's just Tupperware containers full of rocks. He's looking through them. Is there anything that's worth? And he comes to a Tupperware with a rock, and he takes a look at it. Wait a minute. All right. And on the Tupperware containers, it says $15 each. And so he just confirms with the seller. $15? Guy says, yeah, but man, I just want to clean up. I'll give it to you for 10. Little deal here. 10 it is. $10 laid down. Roy Wettstein, that's the guy's name, Roy Wettstein, pays his $10 and then cleans off the largest star sapphire ever found, valued at $2.28 million. There's a picture of it on the screen for you. When asked, hey, do you feel bad that you gave a guy $10? I mean, no, he says the value is determined by the beholder. This I wonder, beloved, if we have looked at the altar, our personal private altar, as a $10 rock in a Tupperware container. Family worship, leave it or take it. Can go either way. Worship together, a community, a church, it's nice. It's nice to be with people. It's cute to see the kids. Sometimes the Sabbath school teacher's on point, sometimes not. Sometimes the preacher's, well, not often, but there's something more fundamental here. This is the altar that the community gathers around, where we hold each other accountable and we display compassion that then becomes the catalyst to display the glory of God to our planet and beyond. A $10 act can produce a $2.28 million star. Really? Yep. That's it. The altar is that important. I'm going to invite our worship team, our deacons, to take their place as they collect our morning tithes and offerings. I want to put a number on the screen for you, a connect number. If you're a first-time guest, you text this number, 937-619-9798, or you can grab the connect card or the welcome card in the pew back in front of you. If you fill that out, if you have a prayer request, you can drop it in the offering plate when the deacons come by for our tithes and our offerings. You can put it in there, and they'll collect it, and we'll follow up with you. If you have a prayer request, first-time guest, you have a need, you want to take a next step with Jesus, you want one of those books, we'll make sure you get it. We'll hand deliver the book. If you want one of those Israel books, you just let us know. But then together, let's make this commitment through our theme song. We only have one more week to sing it after this. I am resolved to go, to meet with Jesus. I am resolved, I am determined to do it. We'll sing it sitting, and then at the end, we'll stand after the deacons have served us.
I will
Following the benediction, I would invite you to be seated. During the postlude, our deacons will collect our tithes and our offerings. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn His face towards you and give you peace until again we meet and worship. Amen.